Good morning, everyone. As you're joining the room, thank you for joining us for our first session of the Information Literacy Summit. If you'd like, go ahead and introduce yourself in chat and just tell us where you're coming from. All right, well, it's 10:45, so let's go ahead and get started. And thank you all for introducing yourself in chat. Welcome again to the first session of the Information Literacy Summit. I'm Fee Rissmiller from DePaul University, and I'll be serving as co-moderator with my colleague, Julia Walrap. The title of this presentation is When Your YouTube Algorithm Scares You, Data, Media, and Civic Literacy in a Semester-Long Library Course. And our presenters this morning are Dr. Colleen Harris and Beth Blackwood. We will be recording this session. There will be a Q&A at the end, so please hold on to your questions until the very end. I will now turn it over to Dr. Blackwood and Beth and take it over. It's all yours.
Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? I hope well. It looks like we've got folks from all over today, spanning all of the time zones. We are really excited. I'm Colleen Harris, and Beth Blackwood is one of the other faces you see in that strip of fort on the side. And we are here to chat with you and start some discussion amongst everybody, sort of using our example of what Beth created as a semester-long course in terms of data literacy. So let me go to our starting slide. I want to do a land acknowledgement. Ventura County, California, which is where Cal State Channel Islands is situated, is on the traditional lands of the Barbareño and Ventureño band of the Chumash people. And so we honor the fact that they've been stewards of this land long before we came here, and that we are tasked with the responsibility of returning the respect to the land. So that is really important to our identity as an institution out here in Southern California. A little bit about us. California State University Channel Islands is the youngest of the Cal States. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary in the fall as a university. We are federally designated as a Hispanic serving institution. About 60% of our students are first gen, 55%, I think it might be more this year, are from underrepresented populations, with over half of that being Latinx populations. 60% of our students are Pell eligible. And for context, we're located approximately an hour, depending on traffic, north of Los Angeles and on the coast. And we're named for the Channel Islands are a little bit north of us and then out. And it is a federal preserve out there for the lands and the ocean. And so that is where we are situated, and we are approximately 5,700 FTE in terms of enrollment of our students. And that includes our undergraduates as well as some very small graduate programs. So we have a small kickoff activity, and let me make sure. So let's take a couple of seconds, and then we'd like for you to consider some questions after you see some of this info.
It looks like we may not be getting sound from this video, but if you're not, what this video is describing is, I'll just jump in, is a YouTube influencer who is telling you all about this particular type of chemical that is found in silly putty and also in various fried foods. Most of you, if any of you are on Instagram or on YouTube, you're probably familiar with videos like this that often kind of tell you about what type of clean eating you should and shouldn't be doing. I think the moral of this video is that, oh, if you can't pronounce the thing in your ingredients label, then you shouldn't be putting it in your body. So that's the overall, if we're not getting sound from this, but don't worry, she was a little bit obnoxious, so don't worry.
Sorry about that. So this is the kind of thing that is going to come up pretty regularly in folks' feeds, depending on the searches they run, or as one of our activities was for the students, to just let their YouTube algorithm run and see what happens. And so some of the questions that come up or that should come up, right, when we see these kind of videos is, what kind of sources is she using, right? Ruth says there are no references, also correct. Why are we seeing this video in terms of, have we looked up healthy nutrition, right? Toxic foods, things to stay away from.
What about your search preferences and your previous searches, your Google Chrome history? What about that? What about you is having, this show up in your feed, unless you search for it, which, no shame.
Which I did, which I'm sure has messed up my own algorithms at this point. And so this is the kind of subject that we were trying to get our students to really consider seriously. Distracted by the glossy production. Are there other questionable videos that I've watched that prompted me to get this one? Right, excellent question. What did I watch to have this come in my feed? How many people
and I think one of the biggest, most important questions and really part of the structure of this whole course that we're getting into is, why am I seeing this video? If Colleen and I both did a search that brought up this search appeared in someone's like YouTube results, it might be in Colleen's and it might not be in mine. And I think that is one of the biggest takeaways that we want our students, when we're teaching them how to safely use all of the vast amounts of media that they have available to them, are aware that we are our own search histories, our own preferences are reflected in the things that we're seeing out on the web. So if anybody else has comments on that, we'll jump into our next slide. So this image, I did a long search to try and actually find the real reference of this image. And there is a whole Reddit feed of people who I think are librarian affiliated, trying to actually track where it came from. Its first sighting, according to Reddit, was on Imgur. So that is my citation for it, but I absolutely love it. I've used it as kind of a theme of our class. So I wanted to have everybody have a look at that. You might've seen it before, but just to give you a rough outline of what we're going to be discussing today, and Colleen, feel free to jump in anytime. We're first going to give you an overall course description, kind of where it came from, why we taught this course, where it came from, where kind of our own mentalities, what brought this about, our learning outcomes, our core data literacies, so the things that actually informed what the literature behind it that we use, a little bit of high level popular content from our 15 weeks, a couple of examples that we used, how we specifically tailored it to our student body. We're not an R1, we are primarily Pell funded school. So there were a lot of kind of issues that we needed to account for to make sure that our students could be successful in the course. The course materials, we're going to give you a QR code that you can get access to the syllabus and a chunk of the readings that we used. And also has these slides in there. A little audience challenge. So if anybody is hovering in the background and expecting to not have to go into a breakout room, I'm giving you the warning now to prepare yourself to choose either a one-shot or an in-bed discussion. I have been that person, so there is no judgment. And then we're going to go into those breakouts and then finally talk a little bit about the challenges and have some questions. So let us get going. All right. To start you off, I have to give a deep shout out to the professor who formed most of my understanding and being on this topic. Some of you may have read anything by Zeynep Tefechi. She's in the information science school at SILS at UNC Chapel Hill. I see somebody knows her. Oh, I'm obsessed with her. Anyway, I took this class, a form of this class, as a seminar called Big Data, Algorithms in Society in fall 2016, which, can anybody think of something that happened in fall 2016 that would have made this a very important class to take during that period? Feel free to throw that in the chats. Anyway, I asked the students that too. And Gen Z often doesn't follow me as easily as a group of librarians will. But I was so moved by that course that several years later, when I made my way back to academic libraries, I really wanted to see if we could make this a course for undergrads, even if it didn't affect undergrads specifically. If like one undergrad shared this with their grandparent or their parent, I felt like we could make a little difference in this like tiny kind of niche field that we're in. So originally that was the description that we used and tried to advertise it a little bit, and some context for the course. It's actually a cross-listed with communication. There were we're lucky at Channel Islands to have the ability to actually teach a 4-credit course. So it was three units for, it's a critical thinking is what it counts for in our gen ed requirements. So it was pretty popular. It had not been updated since, I believe it was, Colleen, you want to say 2008 when I took it over in 2019. So
it was pretty old. Yeah.
We were still looking at like broadcast media and like analyzing a radio ad, which, maybe that's coming back around with your podcast, but it needed a little tweaking. So I took it on the task to kind of do a new prep and work it out. But just to give some kind of context of where this came from and the mindset that I was coming from while I was reading, kind of thinking through the readings, thinking through the structure, really came from the work that I did with Dr. Tefeci. And I would highly recommend her book, Twitter and Tear Gas, which is Creatively Commons licensed, and is at least one chapter of it is in the folder that we're going to show with the QR code later on. But yes, I am going to share. I see that I am going to share the syllabus. It's in the QR code that we're going to get to here in a little bit. All right, so let's go on to our next slide. Thank you, Colleen, for hitting the buttons. All right, context again. These learning objectives are not exactly the learning objectives I would have chosen for this course, but I could not change them through our curriculum kind of system within the 2 years that I have been doing this. So I kind of swapped it around, but we had to define our key concepts, which primarily were, what are algorithms? What is data? What is big data? Those core kind of concepts. What is information? These are all very tiny, but you'll be able to see them later. Mostly like, how do we understand the dissemination of information? How do we actually access it? Comparing information for convergence/divergence. I think if any of you have read, I believe it is the Creo article about lateral reading, that is kind of where we went with that. Evaluate information and its sources critically to form conclusions. But the biggest thing to talk about and kind of the theme of the class was, if the product is free, you are the product. That is the thing that I had the students repeat back to me whenever we could. That's the whole idea that I wanted our students to come away with, is that just because we're using something that's free or something has been chosen for us. I talk a ton about, we didn't get a choice of using Canvas, did we? Canvas is what we're using. Do we know, have we read all the terms and agreements of Canvas? No, something we might want to investigate. You all didn't get a choice that your campus chose Gmail for you, for our like campus email. That's a choice that was made for you that is, cheaper for the campus, free for you, but something to really think about as we start to use our products and the things that have been kind of laid out for us, whether we chose them or didn't. So if the product is free, you are the product. All right, this is how I kind of modify those learning objectives to get more specific. I read a ton of definitions of what data literacy is from a bunch of different fields. And of course, no shocker, the library field had the most accurate for what we were doing. So there were 6 core competencies that I based off of Kristen Fonticharlo and Joe Angela Orley from, I believe it was the ALA magazine a couple of years ago, that had, I thought, the most consistent kind of content for us. So those were big data, statistical literacy, personal information management, which for those of you who want specifics about that, that is like file organization, stuff I care deeply about as the curation librarian. So good file naming, good password management. So if anybody's thinking about like how worried about privacy and worried about data, the only part of this entire course that has to do with data security and like your information being stolen and those kinds of things is personal information management. It's only one piece of it. Data visualization, ethical data use, and data in argument. So these were all topics that we mapped back to those learning outcomes to try and hit them throughout. Since it was an asynchronous online course, we actually made little buttons that would show up on the page that's like, we are working on this learning objective and this data literacy. So those were kind of the areas that we discussed.
Just a side note that Beth is being very modest when she says we. Beth redesigned this course from the ground up, and I was lucky enough to co-teach it with her in its second iteration.
We had a good time. We had a good time. All right, so for anybody who was looking for the syllabus, these slides or that chunk of readings, I think there's about 9 chapters that we used, some that aged really well and some that didn't, that we wanted folks to see. As you can imagine, this course changes super, super quickly. So while we were teaching it just this past fall, like we had the whole Facebook, conspiracy situation happening where, Frances Haugen was being interviewed in the floor of Congress and had to kind of cover that and pull that in. So it moves quickly. It is a time commitment as a full semester course. But a couple of the topics that folks were most interested in were specifically what is information, data, and algorithms. And for that, we used actually that DIKW pyramid, which was an amazing platform to use throughout the course because we had folks actually breaking apart, like, what is the data that you use to make these decisions about this final paper? What is the data that you use to decide whether your friend is mad at you? Is she just hungry? Do you know that she's hungry? That's knowledge that you have about her that you can apply to these very specific situations. So that was one of our most successful, is having them actually either fill in that pyramid for themselves or build their own algorithm, which, like, we had an amazing student who worked at a grocery store, and she was like, oh, I do this exact process every single time when I check something out at the grocery store. That's my algorithm. So having folks kind of click that way really, really worked. We did a whole week on proprietary versus open source software. Definitely the most challenging week for our students, but I think those that stuck with us got the most out of it to really understand that, like, the software we use guides how we use it. Like, if you don't like the way that Microsoft Word works for like bolding or editing something, that's a choice that someone made to do it that way. There's a reason behind it, and to think that all software that we use is made by a human. So the choices that you see that you're unhappy with are that done for whatever reason, whether it's nefarious or it's not. Who owns that thing? That was a really fun one. Folks who didn't realize that their Fitbit that they've been wearing for a million years is owned by Google. Folks who are big, Kindle and podcast users who didn't realize that Amazon owns Wondery, owns Kindle, owns all those products. I don't know how you couldn't know that Kindle is not owned by Amazon, but you would be surprised. The Meta one was always really fun. We have a lot of students who have family in Mexico and abroad who all use WhatsApp. WhatsApp was like the most popular platform that folks used in our class. We were super surprised that we had more WhatsApp users universally than we had Instagram users. Doesn't really matter. Those are owned by the same company, but you get the idea. So folks were really shocked by that. Our Internet of Things section, super popular. We had a lot of wild things about, like, why would someone want an internet connected refrigerator? We have mostly students who do not have internet connected refrigerators, but just the kind of concept of them thinking about, like, why, if I had that money, why would I spend that money on that, drew some really fascinating conversations. And then the last thing, which I will admit is the hardest thing to replicate, would be we had guest lectures from some members of my network who work at Google, who work at Facebook. We had one person from Axios who was a data journalist who talked to us about data visualization. Those were probably the highlight, I think, for our students. We're getting an opportunity to actually meet a software engineer at Facebook and ask them really tough questions that they had to be like, I can't answer that because I have signed an NDA at the beginning of this, and I can only answer these certain things. And being able to see the response from an actual employee, I think, really sunk in for a lot of our students. So harder to replicate. If anyone's interested, email me and I can try and hook you up with a very nice Facebook engineer who feels like this is his duty to do that. Anyway, if anyone needs that QR code, we'll get it back at the end. This is our weekly bird's eye view. Kind of threw some students off because we had all of our assignments due on Tuesday night to give them more of a weekend. We tried to make sure that folks would actually have a weekend to, if you didn't want it, it's not due Sunday night, it's not due Monday night, have Monday and Tuesday to get some stuff done. We had our modules open on Wednesday and our discussions open each week. I think this is on the next slide, Colleen, not 100% sure. Two main activities that kind of drove our conversations. You do not have to read all of this right now. It'll be in the slides, but we had an in the news assignment where we had students try and find something. The class was asynchronous with a once a week in-person session that was optional. But sorry, I'm just checking the chat. The In the News project was really interesting because we had to have them go and find something that was on the topic on our topic of our course that had happened in the last year. And it could be absolute crap media, could be absolute, amazing, whatever platform you want, and then have all the students comment why or why not this was a good source of information. Super exciting. People liked that a lot. Got a couple Breitbart articles in there, which was always fun for the folks who didn't realize that it was a Breitbart article. And then our second was the weekly topic discussion, where we got to have a lot of fun and kind of do some experiments. That particular slide has the DIKW pyramid assignment with the design and algorithm assignment. And if we go to the next slide, I'll explain why we always do an option 1 and option 2. That is because we have a really diverse population of students, many of whom are doing all of their coursework online asynchronously on their phones, completely on their phone, writing their paper on Google Docs on their phone, doing text to speech, which we found is why a lot of grammar issues occur, because they're driving to pick up their kids and writing their paper while they're driving down the 101, those kinds of things. So just a thing to make sure. It may work for your students a different way, but that's how it had to work for ours. With our options, we always had one writing assignment. So if you did not want to do an experiment, you could just write a reflection about what it is that we're talking about this week. And the second one was always a go and find or go and do something. So go do an experiment, go find a data visualization out on TikTok or Instagram and come back and tell us if you could or couldn't find the source of the data. Go and try a piece of open source software that you use every day. They're free, and write us a reflection about how it was different or the same, or whether you or not you would implement it into your life. So always 2 options. So students would have more flexibility on how they can complete things and control their own success over the course. And then the other is to grade with rubrics. So this is the grading rubric for our final paper. We did ask them to do a 10 to 12 page paper, which is why we had a lot of students who dropped in the end. But I think it's better to get it over with early in a safe environment. So we had some amazing papers. For students that did not get incredible writing skills in high school, we had some amazing papers. Our prompt, other thing, first semester, I asked them to just write about anything that related to our topic. Very bad, not a good idea. If you're working with students who especially are in kind of an environment where they've always thrived around prompts, tell me exactly what to do so I know how to do it. Highly recommend using a prompt. The next year, we used one where we asked them to pick a specific technology that they use, like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and do an analysis of it around the stuff that we've done in our course and how it affects their community. So that was the prompt that we use. Highly recommend a prompt. All right, let's see. I think we're on to our next one. Yes.
Oh, and let me jump in for just a moment. It was also really important that the paper was scaffolded throughout the entire semester, right? So we started with annotate 2 sources after your library instruction session. Then we could give feedback, let them make the corrections, and then they could move into the longer annotated bibliography, that sort of thing. And so that's
the whole course was that paper at different levels. So. And now we are going to jump into some breakout rooms to talk about simple. We got to go quick because I see we're already cutting it close, but we're going to jump into some breakout rooms. One is named One Shot, one is named Embedded, and we're going to discuss some ways that maybe you could implement some tactics from this course into smaller one-off or, smaller, shorter interactions with your students. So I am going to be in the Embedded course, and I think you all should be able to join whichever room you want, and they're going to pull us out abruptly when we hit our certain time. So let's try and get in as quick as we can. So I'm headed to the Embedded section.
I'm going to stay here for just a second while folks are jumping into the rooms to make sure that goes smoothly, and then I will jump into the One Shot room. All right, it looks like the breakout rooms are going well in terms of jumping in. Do join one of them, even if you want to lurk. We'll try and get you to chat with us. But we're hoping that this will be where a lot of useful information gets shared. Beth is really against the whole "how I did it good" model of presentation, so we're hoping that you get some interaction out of this.
I see that some of us are still here. Tracy, I can't hear you. I think you're still muted. Let me try to unmute you on my end. Oh, you're good. I apologize. I'm not sure why. I see 9 breakout rooms, but I don't know why we're all here.
Yeah, I didn't see anything where I could select to go to a breakout room.
Yeah,
Neither did I.
I apologize. Let me see if I can remedy that on my end.
Oh, here I go. You have to click on breakout rooms.
Yeah,
Well,
And then you can see, it says join in the
Yes.
individual ones.
Aaron, where do you click?
On the bottom where you have share screen,
Oh, okay.
chat, live.
Oh, I was looking for a pop-up.
Yeah, so was I.
yeah,
done
it'll
it
give
this
you
way
the
before.
option. There are 2 options in there.
Gotcha. We got one
Embedded.
shot versus embedded. Okay.
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
See y'all soon. Julia, do we have anyone? Joy, I hope you can hear me. I see that you're at the reference desk and no problem. You can just hang tight here with us until everybody returns in the next 5 minutes or so. Of course.
Was that in the chat? Did Joy speak to you in the chat?
Yes, it was a direct message. I don't see anyone in waiting room, right? We're good.
I don't see anyone right now.
Good. Perfect.
Ali Reza is still here.
And Joy's hanging out with us. Okay.
Yeah, I'm nervous to leave in case people come in.
Yeah, I think we'll stay. I think they'll be coming back probably, I'm guessing, in the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
hang tight. I'm gonna put myself on mute and grab a drink of water.
Me too. Let me go get a glass. I'll be right back.
Excuse me. Sorry, I needed to get off the work for a while, so I was kind of disconnected from this. Are we supposed to do anything?
Sorry,
Sure.
I was muted.
That's
We
okay.
are in breakout rooms. So if you'd like to join a breakout room, at the bottom of your screen, you will see an option for breakout rooms. And if you click on that, you'll see 2 different options. You'll see an option to join one-shot discussion or the embedded discussion. So you can just join that if you'd like.
So which one is this one?
So we're just waiting for everybody to come back.
Oh,
This is the
really?
home base. This is the home base where we're just hanging out
Oh, I see.
and we're
Okay.
not.
No.
Yes, so after
Yeah,
the
sorry,
discussion's over, you'll come back to this room.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow the discussions while working, but because I'm helping other people, sometimes they stop by and get help from me. So kind of on and off situation I'm having.
That's
here.
definitely fine. You can hang out here and everybody will come back to this room.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
sure thing. I see somebody waiting in the waiting room. I'll let them in.
Thanks, Fee.
Yeah, of course. Another. Oh, it went away.
It'd be cool if my background was a live shot with people walking around the quad.
That would be really cool. Although it's cold today. Is it raining?
I don't know. Doreen, admitted someone else.
Thanks. Hi, Doreen. If you hear us, everybody is in a breakout room and they'll be joining back shortly. I think everybody's coming back. Welcome back.
Awesome. I don't know. Do we need to pull everybody out of Colleen's room too? I'll broadcast the message. Thanks everybody who did some great chatting in ours. I'm so impressed for Friday morning. And if anybody has questions or anything you want to jump into while we're waiting for everybody to come back, especially this is the whole embed crowd, we can continue our conversation. Maybe I can jump in Colleen's room.
I missed the very beginning. Was this a for credit class?
It was a 4-credit class. And it was one of our campus's only 200 level critical thinking courses, which is what made it pretty popular. And it was cross-listed with our communication department.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have cross-listed it with sociology, which is where the majority of the research on this topic is coming from. But, it's based off of people's 20.
How many credits was it?
Pardon?
How many credits?
3.
Were you able to get that through your faculty senate, or was this a pre-established course that you adapted?
I got here in 2019 and I adapted it off of a syllabus that was already extant. I think I recently got it through Curriculog to change the title to data literacy instead of being discerning information in an interconnected world. That was the original name, which, it wasn't the hook getting folks in. So yeah, let's bring everybody back if we can. I sent out a little message, but maybe I jumped back in too early. Any other questions or anything, or bringing everybody back? Great. I see Colleen's back. Hopefully we have everybody at least in the process of making it back. But now we were just going to share out a little bit about what we discussed. So if anybody, maybe I'll pick on Rachel because she's the other CSU person to share out what we talked about in the embed group, unless anybody else is really motivated. No, all right. If you're okay with it, Rachel, I voluntold you, sorry.
So we talked about different ways to adapt this based on the type of work that you're doing. For example, I'm in health sciences. We had someone who was in an English class, and we're talking about adapting it for humanities as well. And we talked about in terms of how maybe from a tell your story administrator perspective, this could also be useful.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway is, I think somebody was happy. I can share this course to the Canvas Commons. So if anyone wants to take a look at it from the high level, just remind me and I'll upload it and send me an email so I know what to tell you.
All right, we chatted quite a bit in the one-shot session about what to do with our extraordinarily limited time. Does anybody want to share? Can I voluntold Erin? It's okay if not. Okay, then I will share while y'all work on generating your bravery as we'll sort that some of these around.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
Oh, please go ahead.
I came back into the main session and I think it automatically muted me. Sorry for the silence.
No worries.
We talked about how to integrate data literacy into one-shots, which can be incredibly difficult because you don't necessarily have the subject area context to know, or be able to get into something that's not related to what their normal topic is. So if you can try to be on the front end and you control the discussion as far as what the topic is, then you can integrate maybe current events into that, and which brings up data visualization a lot of times, fake news, those kinds of topics. Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about, how you can best integrate it when you're in a one-shot, because you can't control, you're usually at the mercy of what the instructor's dictates are. And when you can merge those things, then that works a lot better.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody, for putting up with that activity in a virtual conference. No fun. I had fun anyway. So I think now we're probably just going to open everything up for questions. So if anybody has questions or feedback, anything you're interested in, we'd love to chat with you about it. Ideas. It's got to move quick because it's a constantly moving topic. So I'm interested. It'll be complete now that Elon Musk bought Twitter at it.
Bought Twitter, yes.
So what? When
exciting.
you were doing this class, what would you say was the average amount of time you spent grading materials?
It was way easier for me this year because Colleen helped. So having two librarians was like a ton easier. How we broke it up was grading discussions versus grading like written assignments. So we had, I think, 8 written assignments that were pieces of that scaffolded paper. I did this mostly when I had my chat shift. I could get through most of everybody knows, like most of the class's weekly discussion posts during like a 1 to 2 hour chat shift with a little bit of time for feedback. And then I, because it was the pandemic and I'm not proud of this, took a Saturday morning usually to grade papers, but it was like a special thing, as it is. So it's a time commitment. I would highly recommend, there were 30 students in the class. I would highly recommend getting permission to be lightened your load in other areas. You're going to take it on just because it's a pretty heavy lift in terms of the content, but 30 students isn't the end of the world, but it wasn't 10.
It was quite a bit, even with the shared. So I couldn't imagine what it was like when we did it solo. And for context, we are all part of the instruction program, but librarians get to volunteer to teach our 3-credit classes. We have a couple of them throughout the different parts of the curriculum, upper and lower division. And so when you take a class like this on, you don't get paid extra, your load doesn't get lightened. I have just changed that with our dean. So from now on, Beth, you will get paid. And so, yeah, labor sort of thing. That's important to me. And so, yeah, these are all considerations, especially the time that went into creating the course. Beth was really generous when she copied the course from her original to the new one, and she was updating all the content. All of the hard work had really been done in terms of the foundation building of the class.
Yeah, and I would just say the biggest thing you have to dedicate time to pre-planning for this is making sure all the examples and the content's still relevant, because I had to change like 2 weeks of content immediately after like the Facebook debacle kind of blew up. And now I got a whole week on Twitter that's going to have to change because it is no longer like what we thought it was, this like special like category of space. So see, any questions, desires to grow the class to reach more students. I think if we had more instructors, it would be awesome. Like if we had more time to, have everybody take a section of it and kind of tweak it for their own interest. My interest is obviously very much like the social media kind of aspect. I think that there are a ton of really cool ways you could take it. Like this class would be super interesting from the like health and wellness perspective, which I think that industry is like just ripe for like all kinds of crazy misinformation if you didn't meet the food babe on the first slide. So I think there's a ton of cool ways to do that. I'm probably going to bother. I see Rachel's already unmuted, but I was like, let's get a CSU. Let's get an extended class of this anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that there's so much potential to expand this. It's actually something I'm hoping that eventually maybe you and I can have a chat about. I would think one of the major areas for growth in this would be IPE education styles, so the interprofessional education, because especially given that health literacy is such a topic that not only health sciences, but really all people have to deal with. Yeah, we could blow this up. This would be doable.
I love it. And I know that this class is going to be included in a new minor that we have happening at Channel Islands, which is going to be called the BASS program, which is Business Analytics and Data Storytelling, I think is what it is. And this is going to be in that kind of minor. So we're starting to get included in other areas, which is nice to get a broader kind of diversity of students. We've mostly had freshmen who were put in it by their academic advisors or senior level comm students who are trying to kind of get that last check mark. But I think it would be really fascinating. I want more computer science students in there. That's really what I want.
Yeah, there's interest from other faculty on campus about this class. So it's going to be included in the neurodiversity living learning community for the next academic year.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I'll be revising it a little bit, but we'll be able to offer it specifically for that particular student community. And I also think that, I don't know about many of you, but I know that as I have grown, I'm not going to say older, perhaps more experienced in the profession, going through this class was excellent for me to update my own knowledge, my own understanding of how things work. I am actually in the Internet of Things. I live with Alexa. She does everything for me in my apartment and I love it. And so it was really interesting co-teaching it with Beth because we're on sort of opposite sides of that spectrum. And so for students to see that going back and forth, I think they also found really interesting. The other thing that Beth integrated into this class, and I know we're running low on time, was an actual, most weeks was a reflection, a student's self-reflection on that particular data competency, that particular subject we covered in their own lives. And
it was really a rift on the minute paper. If you've seen any folks who are exit ticket, I think some faculty members call it that, where they have to like complete a short Google form before they leave class and it counts as like a percentage of their participation grade. That was the same idea.
And that was really useful to sort of keep tabs on which students were not quite following along so that we could intervene with them really quickly. A lot of our students were very engaged, which was exciting. More folks showed up for the non-required asynchronous meetings on Tuesdays than I ever thought would. And I think it's because the way that Beth designed the class was so intriguing.
Thank you, Colleen and Beth, for giving us so much to think about. I think we're all very interested and curious to take a look at all the materials you've created, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. Thank you everyone for attending. I am putting the link for the summit along with the password in chat. So please feel free to look at the program and attend more sessions that you might find interesting. And again, thank you for this wonderful presentation. And we'll see you all later.
Thank you all for coming. It was really good to see you.
It was nice meeting you all.
Thanks all.
Bye.